Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of Empowered in Health. As always, I am so excited you're here to join the conversation. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about maternal mental health, specifically postpartum health, and this idea of what maybe is the biggest lie. I'm not even going to say maybe. What is the biggest lie inside the messaging around women's health, specifically with postpartum health? And I'm going to start with sharing kind of my personal postpartum journey, specifically with my first kiddo. So for those of you that maybe have been around or that know me, you know that our first kid was born abroad in Australia, away from family. It was just my husband and I, away from family, first-time parents, and we were navigating everything on our own. And the blessing of that experience was the norm at that time in Australia was staying in the hospital for 5 days. So we were able to stay in the hospital for 5 days and get support, get lactation consultant support, and so much more, which we desperately needed, right? Going into that transition as new parents with no real support as far as family or anybody around, no real friend network, like very little friend network, and being in a totally new place felt very hard, right? And I remember how mentally and emotionally unglued I felt in the beginning because I just felt so alone, right? And that mental and emotional process was hard to work through because I just had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what it was really gonna feel like, and I had no idea how to manage it. And so the mental and emotional component to me stepping into motherhood was hard, right? And it was hard in different ways for every single one of my postpartum journeys. But the first one particularly was hard just because we didn't have any real support network. Now, thankfully, Australia is an amazing country where you have, built-in support that they create through their healthcare system, right? So we had 5 days in the hospital. Then our first well checks were at our home, right? The nurses actually came to our home and weighed the baby in our home, right? They brought a scale. They did all the well checks in our home. So we didn't have to cart the baby out freshly postpartum and do all those things initially, which was huge for the mental and emotional weight I was carrying, the exhaustion that I felt, the sleep deprivation, the totally feeling unglued in my body, feeling like having that support come into my home was huge. And then the other thing that was really huge was they actually set me up with a mother's group very intentionally with other moms in my very close proximity town who had babies recently. And we had mothers groups that were coordinated and set up for us. So we had an opportunity to connect really quickly and talk about what was going on and talk about mothering and talk about our kids. And it was a tremendously valuable resource for me. And it was the thing that was extremely helpful for me with kind of moving through the mental and emotional components that I felt very strongly in the beginning of becoming a mom. And I'm so grateful for that experience because it gave me a totally different lens to think about how do you have babies and how do you get support and what does that look like in another country. For us, that was an incredible experience and something that I'm so grateful for, like I said. Now, here's the thing that I've been unpacking from a maternal mental health standpoint and the thing I want to talk about today. Because I remember as I was finally getting support with the other moms in my community in Australia, finally kind of getting through some of the mental and emotional weight that I felt, the next thing that I started to think about and quote unquote want was getting my body back, right? And this is the message that we hear all the time in the women's health space, specifically when it comes to postpartum health. And this is why I want to talk about it today, because as I've been working through it and unpacking, the messaging that comes around women's health, this is one of the biggest lies that exists. And I want to talk about why, and I want to kind of give some context to it and give my perspective and just give you some ideas on maybe some unpacking or things that maybe you can reflect on in your own personal wellness journey. So here's why this is tough, right? Here's why this matters. When we're constantly being bombarded with messages of getting your body back or going back to a place where you were way before you even became pregnant or the woman you were before you were a mom, whatever it is, we're completely discouraging, discounting, and not paying attention to the importance of really leaning into and embracing the natural evolution that we are going to feel throughout our life, right? And I really believe, especially as I've worked with clients and I've gone through so much in my own personal wellness journey, that this message of getting back or going back or getting your body back or whatever backwards is just doing us a massive disservice. It's not serving us mentally and emotionally when it comes to our inside out wellness. The truth is, when you become a mom, everything changes. Everything changes. Some things are great. Some things are really hard. Some things are just different. Not bad, not good, just different, right? But the thing is, everything changes. So this concept or this messaging of going back, again, is never going to serve us from a mental and emotional standpoint when it comes to our inside out health and wellness. And we have to be aware of this, right? We have to be aware of this. And the reason I'm sharing this message so deeply today is because this is one of the things that I've been working to unpack when it comes to the soundtracks on my own mental and emotional wellness journey, my own women's health wellness journey, whatever. The soundtracks matter. And we live in a society where this messaging is prevalent everywhere in the women's health space, right? This concept of, you had a baby and now it's time to get back to you, get back to your body. And that just can't be the way that we think about taking care of ourselves and our health and wellness. Here's where I want to encourage all of us to flip the script. And this is something that I'm working on, right? I don't have this perfect yet. I'll never have it perfect. The truth is I've been growing up with this narrative for a really long time. And I know many others have too, right? This idea of getting your body back. But here's where I want to flip the script. And here's where I want to encourage us. Let's flip it to this place of chasing our 2.0 version, right? Remembering that this concept of going back or getting our bodies back is a lie, right? Because going backwards is not the goal in the end, right? We're trying to chase the strongest version of ourselves, the 2.0 version of ourselves, the evolved version of ourselves, right? And again, if we're constantly telling ourselves that the goal is to go back, we're going to fall short somehow. And I want all of us to work on embracing this concept of that is not the goal. Because I feel like, again, it's just doing us a disservice. It's going to feel defeating in some way. It's going to feel like we're falling short in some way. It's going to feel like we missed the mark in some way, which isn't necessary for us to really think through, right? As far as keeping that as the thing that we think about most. I know this is really hard. And, it's hard in my own life. It's hard for me to talk about these things of how, I remember feeling so mentally and emotionally unglued postpartum. And then once I kind of got out from under that fog, the next thing I was thinking about was, how do I get my body back? And again, hindsight in a lot of ways is 2020. I'm a seasoned mom now, right? We're out of the baby stage. My youngest is 4.5. And now that I have, an almost 13-year-old, 12.5, almost 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4.5-year-old, I'm just out of this postpartum baby stage and so much more into this like midlife mom stage, seasoned mom stage. And it has completely shifted my perspective on this concept of health and wellness for moms and mental health for moms and postpartum health for moms, right? Now, here's the thing. I 110% believe that as moms, prioritizing our health and wellness has to be number one, right? Like that is the core of what I teach and empower women to understand. Prioritizing your fitness, prioritizing your nutrition, working on your mental and emotional well-being, working on connections, working on calm and rest, working on taking care of you is pivotal in order to really show up in your life the way, you deserve to and you want to. Like it is something that we have to prioritize. So this is not saying that, if we are getting rid of this body back message that we're no longer prioritizing wellness. That's not the message at all. The message is, how are we shifting this to forward progress, to forward motion, to thinking about this redesign? I work with a practitioner, her name is Dr. Paige, and I will make sure that she gets linked down in the show notes. I shared a little bit of this concept on my social this week, and she said perfectly that this is about redesigning, right? And reframing. We're not like going back. We're not striving to be what we once were because we aren't what we once were. Stepping into motherhood changes everything, right? Like growing older as a woman changes everything. Perimenopause changes everything. Like there's just constant evolution and transitions that happen. And if we're constantly in this mindset of trying to get back to what we once had or what we once were or what our body once looked like, we're just doing ourselves, again, a massive disservice, and we're not focusing enough on how are we leaning into the evolution that inevitably is going to happen in our life. How are we leaning into the 2.0 version of ourselves? How are we leaning into, building into our strongest from the inside out with where we are right now? I'll be the first to admit, again, that this isn't easy. But calling attention to it and getting self-aware enough to say, what has this message maybe said to me in my life, right? Like, what has it caused me to say to myself in my life? What is the messaging? Is it serving me, or is it something that I need to let go of? Is it something that just isn't going to be the way, right? And this is one of those specific women's health messages it's just a lie. It's a tremendous lie. And this self-awareness practice of us speaking up and talking through it and being honest and sharing about how it just doesn't serve us is the way through it and the way to let it go, right? The way to get rid of it. I don't want women to feel like they have to get back to something they once were. I don't want you to feel like getting your body back is going to solve all of the things you probably feel from the inside out now that you've stepped into motherhood, or now that you've stepped into a new transition in your life, or that you've stepped into perimenopause or whatever it might be, right? That has been the message that has been sold to us for so long. This concept of, if you get your body back, then all of these things will be fixed, quote unquote, right? Or all of these things will essentially be better. And while I know it's not easy, I want you to pause and question that, because that's been one of the things I've been doing in a very deep way for the past handful of years. I've worked in the health and wellness space for almost 8 years, or about 8 years. And, health and wellness has always been a huge part of my life. I grew up an athlete and have always, worked on my health from the inside out. Now, here's the thing. I've learned over time, and I've shared this, that I've created habits in my life that actually were a detriment and adding more stress than truly helping me, right? And again, on my postpartum journeys, specifically my postpartum mental health journeys, I've learned now and can see crystal clear how this idea of telling myself that getting my body back was the answer is actually something that has created a major disconnect inside my body and my brain as I've grown older and as I've evolved in my health over time. And so what's the point of this message? I guess, as always, my sole focus here is to empower you on your own health and wellness journey, right? To not be afraid to question the things that you've maybe seen or heard or have told yourself, to not be afraid to do the research, to change things, to evolve, to lean into the next version of yourself, to empower you and encourage you to know that you are meant to evolve into who you're meant to be, right? Like, you are meant to go to the next stage of your life, right? And we can't be looking back. That can't be the focus and the goal. And this has been, again, an active practice I have had to make in my own life. And it's something that I will continue to work through coaching other women on, because this is a major, massive mindset shift that is honestly, in my mind, a necessity in order to really get to the core of how do you get to a place of sustainable health? How do you get to a place that feels really good from the inside out, right? It's not this concept of chasing what maybe worked or what you once were or what your body was or whatever. It's forward progress to the next thing and evolving into who you're meant to be, and getting excited about that and getting fulfilled by that and getting motivated by the opportunity for new things and new growth and new strength and something you've never maybe done before. I know that's not easy, and I keep saying it, but I really want to empower you with this message today. I would absolutely love your thoughts on this. Again, I shared this over on my social media this week, but I'd love your thoughts, your reviews, your comments. Send me a note via email or on social. You can find all of my details in the comments and the show notes of this podcast. But I would love your feedback on this. What are your thoughts? Truly, what are your thoughts on this message in women's health around getting your body back? Whether that's in postpartum health, whether that's in perimenopause health, whether that's whatever it might be, right? Again, it's not about not prioritizing our wellness, but it is about drastically changing the messaging and the narrative that leaves us feeling empowered and encouraged to move into the next season, rather than holding us hostage and keeping us stuck in this idea of trying to gain what we once had, right? Or what we once were. That's not what life's about, right? Life is about forward progress, 2.0 versions, letting go of the old, embracing the new, learning how to build into strength, trying new things, and so much more. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on this, either via email, on social, at any point in time. As always, thank you so much for tuning in today. I'll see you in the next one.